Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you might be, and welcome to the Higher Education Sustainability Initiative HESI special event, Where Next? Redesigning Further Education for the Future. My name is Florencia Librizzi. I'm the Head of Program and Partnership at the SEG Academy at CSN and co-chair of HESI, and I'm delighted to be your MC today. We thank you all for joining us amid these trying times. And we'd like to thank our distinguished speakers from around the world who agreed to spend time with us today to reflect. We need to reflect and understand the impact of COVID-19 on higher education, explore where we want to go, and consider new ideas on how we can regenerate, renew, and revitalize higher education to advance the Sustainable Development Goals. And furthermore, we want to be inspired and build collective intent, since we need fresh and innovative thinking while also considering inclusion and equity at all levels everywhere. As many as you will remember, HESI was created in 2012 in the run-up of Rio +20 conference to elevate higher education for sustainable development. And it's our renewed intention that this partnership will help us all to scale up the efforts to enable higher education to bring about the radical change and the regeneration that our world sorely needs. We have plenty of challenges, as we know, but also a very important opportunity at this very special moment. We're encouraged by this event, and which is live stream, and this compelling agenda. So without further ado, I will now give the floor to our first speaker, which is Ms. Stefania Cianini, Assistant Director General for Education, UNESCO. Stefania, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Florencia. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's a great pleasure, a great honor to be with all of you today. I think it's a very timely meeting organized by Higher Education Sustainability Initiative. I remember last year at the Hunger Week, we launched the Futures of Education initiative from UNESCO, which is still about reimagining how knowledge and learning can shape the future of humanity. And today, we are talking about another kind of word, I should say, like this. The pandemic has absolutely disrupt every aspect of our lives and also amplified inequalities. This was something that we started from UNESCO to measure from the very beginning. So everywhere education systems are put to test, and I think it's very important today to discuss with you and your incredible network about the challenges and opportunity. Let me just summarize some interesting numbers we have and see from a qualitative and a quantitative perspective how the situation is going within this pandemic, and also just being in a so-called transitional phase to the post-COVID, and there is a strong need of remedial actions to put in practice. So our higher education specialized institute, HESI, which is based in Latin American region in Caracas, estimates that 1/4 of university students in that region are left out due to the lack of access to technology and platforms, and only 75% of institutions have the capacity actually to offer online education. And another survey made by our UNESCO chairs, there are some 700 chairs all over the world, found that poor internet connectivity, social isolation, and financial concerns were among the top challenges facing learners studying remotely during these last four months. UNDP on its side, as well, the global human development could decline for the first time since the concept was coined in 1990. So one of the reasons is setbacks to education and learning losses. And it's another very clear lesson already be learned during these months. And UNESCO now is starting to project numbers to see which are the challenges in the immediate future. And we see that some 70 million children and youth are at high risk of not returning to care centers, schools, or universities in next year. I mean, in next academic year. That means in 2020. So the highest reduction of this expected this is at the tertiary level, including universities, with 5.8 million students at risk. They are more likely to drop out or delay their return due to cost and to dependency on part-time jobs in order to pay their studies. So to go straight to the point, I think you'll discuss, and we're discussing today, what is the next, what you have to do, which are the priorities you have to put in our roadmap. Sustainable transformation and inclusive growth are not possible, we know, without innovative and inclusive tertiary education. Universities, I repeat it many times, I want to underline today as well, are the main infrastructure for development, now more than ever. So we first need a renewed global commitment to inclusion and equity in education at all levels, including and especially at university level. Beyond this, the crisis has highlighted the need for new partnerships. We can build back better together, and we are developing inclusive online, remote, and blended learning solution together with national policies and together with the UN system working on that. UNESCO, as maybe you know, launched a very innovative initiative at the end of March this year, the Global Education Coalition, and we are focusing very much on solution, immediate solution, remediate actions, and reimagination of the future. Second point, let me underline this, which is another very important one. The COVID pandemic has delivered the higher education community a stark reminder of the crucial, critical importance of science and scientific cooperation. What we need now more than ever is a free circulation of knowledge through deeper cooperation between all regions and between institutions in terms of research and in terms of training and education processes. So the Global Convention approved by member states at the end of last year during the General Conference of UNESCO, I think it's a good tool still, and it can become a very important asset, you know, supporting the work we are doing at university level. Third, the last point, the extent to which universities, institutions gear their programs to the Sustainable Development Agenda will be more than ever critical for ensuring students will be really appropriately equipped to make informed decisions about the future, to become somehow global citizens, really, what we really need now. And the SDGs offer universities a global curriculum for research, learning, and I'm sure that the Higher Education for Sustainability initiative can become really one of the pillars, as it's been from the establishment some years ago. Let me also mention the last point I care very much. Last year, the UN General Assembly recognized ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, as a model for thinking learning to achieve all SDGs. It's about taking care. It's about taking care of the planet. It's about taking care of measures to stop climate change. It's about taking care of the future. And I think that the UNESCO roadmap about ESD will launch officially next year in Berlin, if everything will allow us to do. It was already planned this year, fortunately it's been postponed. It's another important asset to do that. So I really invite higher education institutions, starting from this important meeting, to consider these three topics and to consider ESD, education for sustainability, one of the main pillar of the agenda in the coming months and years. And I thank you very much for your commitment and for inviting me, and also for giving the floor as I have, unfortunately, to move to a meeting with member states. Thank you very much, Florence.
Thank you so much, Stefania, for that. It's now my pleasure to give the floor to our next speaker. We're going to hear from Her Excellency Mona Yule, President of the Economic and Social Council.
Excellencies, colleagues, dear friends, I am inspired and encouraged to see so many participants gather virtually today from around the world to discuss higher education for the future we want. We meet here today in the midst of a brutal pandemic, one which is upending lives and livelihoods, including for our young people. School closures to stop the spread of COVID-19 have affected over 90% of the world's student population. That is 1.6 billion children and youth. And the pandemic has underscored the need to overcome the digital divide. Even though remote learning is provided by many students as an alternative, children and youth is vulnerable and disadvantaged communities often do not enjoy the same access. And the situation is often acutely felt by young women. This is something we must change if we are to achieve an equitable future for all. Dear colleagues, higher education is fundamental to advancing progress on all the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm pleased that today's event will enable us to hear your ideas on how we can regenerate, renew, and revitalize higher education to support sustainable development and a green recovery. We must put equity and inclusion at the heart of our effort and ensure they are always anchored in the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Agreement on climate change. Quality education has a catalytic impact on eradicating poverty, reducing inequalities, improving health, driving economic growth, and achieving gender equality. This is why in the Sustainable Development Goals we have all promised to ensure equal access to education for all women and men by 2030. This includes higher education. Yet, higher education is still hard to access and to complete for students from marginalized groups, including indigenous people, ethnic minorities, and persons with disabilities. And in low-income countries, women still lag behind men in accessing higher education. We must do more to close the gender gap and ensure that women can benefit from higher education on equal terms. The COVID-19 pandemic is unfortunately likely to exacerbate these inequalities. The principle of inclusion must be at the forefront if we are to deliver on our promise of leaving no one behind. Government must address the concerns and interests of students from marginalized groups to ensure that the right to education and equal participation in society is realized for all. Targeted measures, including scholarships, are critical in these efforts. Dear friends, allow me to conclude by thanking all here today for taking this innovative partnership forward. I am encouraged by your tireless engagement to inspire current and future generations of creative thinkers to advance sustainable development. The right to education is most at risk during emergencies, but it is also the exact time when it's needed the most. Education is life-saving. Not only does it provide safety and protection, it also instills hope for a brighter future. After all, education is not only a human right, it is essential to bringing dreams to life and to realizing the future we want from all. Thank you.
I will now give the floor to our next speaker, Mr. Elliot Harris, Assistant Secretary General for Economic Development and Chief Economist, UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Thank you, Elliot.
Good afternoon, good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's a pleasure for me to address you today at this year's special event by the Higher Education Sustainability Initiative. It's a unique opportunity indeed to explore how higher education can support our global community to recover and build back better from the shock of COVID-19. We are facing a global crisis unlike any in the 75-year history of the United Nations, one that is killing people, spreading human suffering and upending people's lives. This is a human crisis, attacking societies around the world at their very core. Its impact will depend on whether the recovery is gradual or rapid, and whether we return to the pre-pandemic world or to one that is more sustainable and more equitable. Initial assessments are, however, sobering. The enormous loss of lives and livelihoods, the deepening poverty and hunger are all threatening the gains that we've made over the past decades. Global GDP is expected to contract sharply in 2020. Estimates range from 3.2% to 5.2%, potentially the largest contraction in economic activity since the Great Depression, and far worse than the 2008-2009 global financial crisis. One thing is clear. If the responses to this crisis are ad hoc, underfunded, and without a view to long-term goals, the consequences of COVID-19 will be deep and long-lasting, and they risk reversing decades of progress. Colleagues, while the anticipated outcomes of the COVID-19 pandemic are dire, they can be averted by the actions we take now. As countries begin to move toward recovery, coherent actions can place the world on a robust trajectory towards achieving sustainable development. 3 priorities in particular will enable the world to build back better in a unified way. First, we must maintain past progress made towards eradicating basic deprivations. Backsliding on the progress already made on the SDGs not only imperils prospects for eradicating basic deprivations, it also reduces resilience to other shocks in the future, especially for the most vulnerable. Second, we must accelerate the universal provision of quality, essential services. Guaranteed universal access to services that provide quality healthcare, education, basic income security, water and sanitation, clean energy, and the internet must become an integral part of the recovery from the COVID-19 crisis. And third, we must reverse course on the degradation of nature. Unlike the sudden onset of this pandemic, the twin crises of climate change and biodiversity loss have built up more slowly. The pandemic itself reveals the size of the challenge, but it also affords a chance to observe, even if only for a short period, the feasibility of being able to reverse the degradation of nature. Ladies and gentlemen, science and technology are essential to humanity's collective response to the COVID-19 pandemic. They are also essential to our efforts to achieve sustainable development. I'd like here to highlight 5 early lessons that can strengthen how science and technology are harnessed, not only in the recovery from the pandemic, but also in support of the implementation of the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. These priorities and lessons are drawn from UNDESA's Policy Brief series on the SDGs and on COVID-19, and I invite you to consult these documents, which are available on the DESA website. The 5 priorities are: first, we need to strengthen national capacities for science-based decision-making, including by looking at how science policy advisory systems function where they exist, strengthening such systems where they are weak, or introducing them where they do not yet exist. Second, we need to enhance public trust in science. Third, we also need to ensure universal access to practical solutions. Fourth, we must act with greater urgency on global scientific assessments. And fifth, we need to ensure that knowledge and data can be shared more effectively for more collaborative research. Collaboration across science and technology communities has grown in response to the current crisis, and that holds promise for enhanced cooperation in the future as well. Equally important and especially relevant for this meeting, higher education institutions are central hubs for generating and delivering critical science and technological knowledge. They will be also at the heart of efforts to deploy scientific and technological advances in ways that enhance our quality of life, provide solutions to many of our key problems, and eventually make sustainable development a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, the SDG Summit in September 2019 was marked by renewed commitment from world leaders to accelerate progress towards the SDGs. Although the way ahead appeared steep, the stakeholders were energized by the launch of the Decade of Action to deliver the SDGs. To support this Decade of Action, the Department of Economic and Social Affairs is collecting ambitious and innovative new SDG acceleration actions from governments and stakeholders, and these are being captured in an online registry. As the global community convenes at the high-level political forum this week, virtually, of course, I would like to invite you and your networks to visit the online registry and to register your new SDG acceleration actions as well. Let us show the world the good work that is out there. Let us be ambitious and bold. Together, we will be able to overcome this challenge and place ourselves firmly on the path towards sustainable development. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Elliot, for those reflections. And with those initial reflections, now we're moving to the next setting of the content part of the agenda, the urgency of where we are now. And I'm going to give the floor to our next speaker, Mr. Nathaniel Smith, Founder and Chief Equity Officer for Partnership for Southern Equity. Thank you, Nathaniel.
Thank you so much for providing an opportunity for me to participate in HESI's critical conversation about the role of higher education in creating a better world. We are in very difficult, yes, yet opportune times, times where challenges like COVID-19 and the uprisings that we're experiencing around the country and around the world are influencing our ability to be a community where not only all people have a chance to prosper, but also all people are considered valuable. It is that intellectual capital of individuals that are being lost as a result of COVID-19, and also the history of structural inequities that are minimizing our ability to be a more sustainable world. I would submit to you this morning that the world will never be sustainable without it also being just. And I believe that it is the role of higher education to not just hoard knowledge for the sake of knowledge, or to create academic environments where individuals have an opportunity to think about the history that we've experienced or pontificate about the future that is possible. The times now are calling for higher education to do more and to be more for our community. It is requiring us now to not just focus on the global challenges around our environmental issues, whether it be around climate change or other key issues that affect our planet. Yes, those are critical and important, but it is also critical that we begin to understand that while we focus on issues like COVID-19, which has become a pandemic for our world, in many places, the US being one of them, that one of the initial pandemics that we have never had an opportunity to solve is the pandemic of structural racism and the pandemic of structural inequities. The role of higher education must be to help to not only alleviate the challenges that we face as relates to our health, but to also use knowledge and pedagogy as a way to not only open up the possibilities for more inclusive and sustainable tomorrow, but equip not only students, not only faculty, but also the broader community in a way where we could come together, leveraging the history and the knowledge of our institutions of higher learning, not as a place where the structures of injustice can be reinforced. And unfortunately, we have a history of that as well, that the role of higher education in many ways has been to reinforce structural injustice as opposed to undoing it. We have an opportunity now to turn the page and begin to create a new chapter where scholarship is also measured by the ability of that institution to provide service to the community, where we're able to redefine what true sustainability means and to put our most vulnerable at the center of how it is measured in terms of its impacts. to create spaces where we have an opportunity to finally acknowledge the unfortunate history of structural inequities that we face in our communities and create opportunities for understanding and healing, to leverage the capacity of our academic institutions to begin to think about policies that could be initiated to enhance reforms that will finally create a level playing field for all individuals in this world, and even more so, play a role in advancing a true regenerative society where everyone is looked at as valuable and as an asset, and no one is considered a liability. We have an opportunity to do that, and we have a chance to look at history as a way to reinforce that belief. I come from a part of the world, the American South, where my ancestors were utilized to generate energy, the energy of our economy, through slave labor. And after the Civil War and Reconstruction, my ancestors were given an opportunity through education to reach beyond the challenges that we faced as a result of slavery. And as a result of that, great intellectuals like Mary Bethune Cookman, or McLeod Bethune, or W.E.B. Du Bois, or great leaders like Martin Luther King leveraged the opportunity of academia to not only make themselves more smart, but also make the world better through their engagement and actions. And I would say to you that we have an opportunity again to turn towards the role of higher education and the people that are a part of it, to again create a world where we're all considered a part of it, and not just physically, but also as an ecosystem that is required for us to create the type of society that we need in order to be sustainable and also in order to be resilient. So I wanted to leave also with a couple of examples before I run out of time. My organization, the Partnership for Southern Equity, is working with the Atlanta University Center in Atlanta, which is the largest academic institution of African Americans in the world, of colleges and universities, that we're working together to create a resilience hub where we're engaging the community around creating a microgrid that will not only provide solar energy and a resilience hub for the universities that are part of the Atlanta University Center, but also the vulnerable populations that are a part of the community that is connected to the Atlanta University Center. I had the honor of working in the past with a local university here in Atlanta to encourage faculty in ways that were encouraging to advance equity through funding of faculty projects and also student engagement through a fellowship program that actually encouraged communities and faculty to get more involved in community. It is very important, again, that we all work to lower the walls of academia and not only encourage opportunities for faculty who care about community to go out in students, but to also to create opportunities for the community to come in and give them a chance to leverage their knowledge and their wisdom in a way that will create better educational opportunities, more holistic educational opportunities for our faculty and our students. And so my challenge to you this morning is to think outside of the box and reaffirm and reconnect with the history of higher education that did not just remain behind its four walls. A history of higher education that inspired the next generation of thinkers and leaders, that leveraged its capacity to create a more sustainable and just world. And higher education system or community that understands that we're at an important inflection moment and that we cannot afford to go back to the way things were. And a higher education community that is willing to use its capacity and its history as a beacon of light that will assist us in moving forward towards a more resilient and just tomorrow. Thank you so much for allowing me to share.
Thank you so much, Natalia, for those words that are very refreshing and so important. Now we will move to the session Higher Education Sustainability Initiative update by Mr. Sam Barrett, co-chair of HESI and chief of youth education and advocacy at UN Environment. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Florencia, and also just thank you to Nathaniel. I think all the words you just said ring very true about how do we make sustainability not something for the few but for the many, and there will be no justice if there is not a sustainable society, and vice versa. I think from my side, I just wanted to update on the progress that we've made. It's a real honour from a UNEP perspective to be co-chair of this initiative. This is the only place that higher education comes together with the United Nations to think about where are we and where do we want to get to. So there's 8 UN partners in here, as well as 30 different alliance networks as well. A lot of the work that is being represented today, the faces of the people behind it aren't being seen, but they all should be acknowledged for the great work that they've done. And I just wanted to give you an update on the progress that we've made. The vision for HESI is very, very simple. It's to raise the voice and influence of the further education and higher education sector, so it's recognised as a key contributor to the Sustainable Development Goals. And so really we're trying to give a platform for higher education, but also to bring it into the mainstream debate so people can feel its influence and its power as it seeks to teach over 200 million people through its walls. I think from our side, I just wanted to acknowledge just Dessa and Elliot and Ola for giving us this opportunity to have this event at HLPF, albeit we're in kind of offices surrounded either by children outside, wherever it might be. I think it's great to all be together, and I'm really looking forward to listening to the debate. I think there's 3 things that we're proud of that we've achieved over the past 12 months, but I want us to be thinking bigger, bolder, and more deeply about what we can achieve. The first thing is that we've looked quite hard at the rankings and assessments, with some great work by Duncan Ross from the Times Higher Education media outlet and the World University Rankings. We've come up with a new framework to help universities decide what rankings make sense, and also for ranking systems to think about what do they currently count that matters, and what are they missing that they should be rethinking about. We're also done a lot of work. Last year, we introduced an initiative that shows how somewhere in the region of about 5,000 universities have committed to decarbonise by 2030 or 2050. I'm delighted to say that that number today is up to 17,000 represented through networks. And the brilliant work of EAUC and Second Nature has just been awesome to drive that forward. And this initiative has now been selected under the Race for Zero for COP26 to be shown to highlight the work that higher education is doing. So we're delighted on that progress, and kudos to everyone who's got involved. And finally, I think we're doing some work to really define what is a green campus. At UNEP, we're working with universities in Africa and India to see how they can think about how they can shift both the faculties around what they teach, to think about the campuses that they teach from and the energy that they use, and also how they can influence students and the choices that they're taking. So we want to help to come up with a normative framework for what really is a green campus and help simplify that work. But I think the purpose of this agenda is to think about where are we and how do we scale. I feel like from our side, we want to put a lot into this work. And really the role of HESI is to do things that we cannot achieve on our own. I think there's been a lot of good foundational work by the Sully test and the Green Gown Awards that you'll hear a bit later. But I think there's some questions we should ask ourselves. The Secretary General has asked for an end to fossil fuel subsidies. So why can't every university divest? We also know that the greatest contribution that universities can do when it comes to sustainability is not just what they put on their roofs, but what do they put into the minds of the students that go to their universities. So how do we change not just the learning outcomes, but the mindsets of the students? So for the next 70 years of their lives, they're making better choices with new habits that are reducing their own individual carbon footprints. Sustainability, finally, isn't a specialism, it's an everydayism. So this isn't just something for the Earth Sciences faculty. And I think looking forward to President Crowe from ASU later, and also I'm sure from Professor Jeffrey Sachs, the work that they've been doing, I think will give us a lot of food for thought about what is the future of learning and what kind of students do we need to rewire the world that we have to the one that we want. So I think there's a lot of great stuff that's going to come from this discussion. I feel like we're all kind of in a virtual room, And so it feels a little bit formal, which is unusual for me, and I never really wear a jacket. So, but I just wanted to say, I think this initiative has got a lot of potential, a lot of promise. The past 12 months, we've scratched the surface to see what we can achieve. But I also want to just build off the back of that, in the words of both Elliot and what we've heard from the ASG, from UNESCO, we really don't have time to kind of put this off anymore. What was important is now urgent. All hands need to be put on deck. And I think this HESI initiative has a responsibility to really think bigger, to think more about what role we can each individually play to work as a collective. Because I think the role that the UN can play is to convene these kind of conversations and to hear different and new voices, such as we heard from Nathaniel, but to reflect on how we can really drive this agenda forward. So I'll leave it here, but I just want to say, for all of you who've made contributions so far, thank you. For all of you who want to make more contributions, we welcome those, and we look forward to this discussion over the course of the next hour and a half, which will then inform the strategy for the next year. So everything that comes through from today is going to be grist, the new mill that we'll be grinding in a discussion that will be taking place next week on the 15th of July. Thank you, Florencia. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Sam. Really encouraged with all the progress, but also what is new also for HESI, so everyone is invited. We're moving now to the next section, which is with some keynotes, learning from our present context and creating regenerative pathways for the future. And I'm pleased to now turn it to Dr. Hilich van Land, Secretary General, International Association of Universities, and Executive Director of the International Universities Bureau. Hilich, over to you.
Thank you very much. Our session is really indeed to look at what lessons can we already try and learn from what is happening around the world. It's a bit early because we're not post-COVID yet, unfortunately. There are many countries around the world that are still facing so many challenges in the midst of it. And we see those countries who believed they were getting out of the pandemic and trying to rebuild are still confronted with many challenges that are coming up back to them, but are coming up in different ways. So it's not only the health crisis, but it's all the other crises that come with it. Around the world, there have been many initiatives to look at what impact COVID-19 has had on higher education. And so if we can get to the next slide, you will see that there are some commonalities around the world that are all a bit similar. So please, the next slide. As a sector, the universities have been impacted heavily. Indeed, we know about campuses that have been closed or who have shifted to emergency online teaching and research for that matter. And the closure is entire or partial, as we heard from Stefania as well. Some universities were not able at all to provide for any kind of teaching, research, or any kind of support. They just simply closed. And that is where the big challenge lays ahead. What happens to all those students who were not able to return or to have and benefit from a kind of education that would actually supplement the period in which these universities were not able to provide for face-to-face meetings? The challenges were multiple, but they were certainly also technical. How to ensure that internet connections were functioning properly and people could take the kind of education that they needed thanks to this move online to emergency online teaching. But the pedagogical challenges were at least as big because many of the staff had to move online overnight and did not have the necessary skills that were required to provide for quality higher education in a different mode. Today, we have in certain countries started to move beyond that, and we're looking at what next. So exams could be organized online for some, other exams have been postponed, will be resumed in the fall, but all of those make for a lot of uncertainty for the many around the world who have been going through these challenging times. But the questions of how to reopen, how to recover, how to rebuild after COVID-19 are definitely on the table of all the leaders of higher education around the world, but not only them, of the staff, of the students, of everyone involved in education at large. Today, the geopolitical changes that are taking place and the national developments that we see, they are also impacted heavily by COVID-19, in that the geopolitical previous connections have changed, and that also will have an impact for the future of higher education at large. The national developments are not all developing for the better, and we hope that the higher education sector can play a key role there to ensure that the future developments are serving society for the better and not the opposite. As well, the models and the contents at institutions can change. And that is, as the previous speakers have said, and not the least Stefania as well, it is time for institutions to also rethink, regenerate, reorganize. But the big question is how and what to. And I'm sure that Jeff, you will be able to address that very question as well, since higher education institutions have been involved in discussions about the transformative aspects to the content even of what higher educations can provide and the kind of models that we need to apply. But still, there is a big work to be done on rethinking the kind of education that we need for today and for tomorrow, as previous speakers also said. So the link to the SDGs is an obvious one for our community and for HESI in particular, but is it an obvious link for everyone? And we need to ensure that the higher education institutions are not pushing that agenda aside for too long, since they have too many other commitments to and challenges to attend to. So we see that higher education is the key player and a key stakeholder to address and engage with the SDGs in order for Agenda 2030 to have any chance to be met by 2030. But we hope that higher education will not be challenged too much in the year to come, so that they can continue to fulfill the role that they need to play. So we build partnerships, very strong ones around the world, and we're very pleased to work with SDSN, for instance, to support many of the SDSN's hubs in Europe, many, or in Latin America or in North America, everywhere, in whichever way we can, because those dynamics are important. There are other ones, obviously, that are important to note. And if we go to the next slide, you can see that we have tried to also see around the world what has been done. So many organizations have started to try and analyze already in early stages the impact of the pandemic. And this list is too long. There's no need to read them. It will be shared anyway. But there are many organizations that really have tried to look at different aspects that were impacted and to analyze these aspects and try and identify already some of the solutions that could be developed to address them. Because if universities are trying on their own and need to develop solutions that are relevant locally, they can learn a lot from the others as well. So I will highlight maybe the work done by associations that work very strongly on internationalization, like the European Association for International Education or the Institute for International Education in the US. But the African Association of Universities also has looked at the impacts on internationalization, for instance. Then there are many initiatives that are led by students, and here I list only one. Otherwise, I would have had pages of examples of monitoring, but the Erasmus Student Network, for instance, linking up with many other student networks from around the world, has really looked at how to measure the impact for students. And one of the major outcomes there, for instance, was the hit to health issues for students, the insecurity, the not knowing where the future would bring them. Would they have the capacity to go back to higher education? All these points have been raised in the questionnaires, and they are now reported on in the surveys. Times Higher Education also conducted a survey among 200 leaders of higher education institutions, and it's worth reading what they said to understand actually what is on the leadership level also, and where to go in the future. UNU, the United Nations University, reached out to the membership of ProsperNet to see how in Asia the institutions were responding to the pandemic. So many more examples there, and I would urge you to also look at those different surveys. We've listed them on the IAU website, and I hope you will have time to take a peek and learn a bit from those. There will be more surveys in the future when leaders of higher education will have even more time to respond to it and to reflect on lessons to be learned. The main conclusions of those surveys are listed on the next slide, where you will see that there are some generic ideas that come out. Indeed, all higher education institutions have been affected by the crisis. And as Stefania said at the beginning of this session, 70 million children are even at risk of not even ever going back to education at all the levels of education. And that is a big concern to the future of our societies. The same applies as well. There is a strong need for support for higher education institutions, and we really urge governments around the world to not let go of their higher education systems, where they will have to make very difficult choices as where to put the money that will need to be reallocated in future budgets. Health and higher education are key for the future. Then the moving online, yes, the universities who could and the students who could attend online teaching benefited from it. But we've also seen that there have been real issues with the quality of the learning experience and also the equality of access and the quality of learning opportunities there. So it's very important to look at all those different dynamics. As well, from the different surveys, we see that a lot of attention has been paid to the future of internationalization. Much emphasis has always been put on mobility. Mobility remains very important for the future as well. We have the opportunity now to develop new strategies for internationalization online, but that's only one part of the experience that students need to embrace if they wish to become the kind of critical and innovative leaders of the future, if they want to understand the world better. So we will need to also ensure that the future is not only online. So there are many challenges, yet there are also opportunities. And if we go to the last slide, we try to highlight a few that came out of the different surveys that were conducted. There are deep impacts on higher education, but there are also opportunities that need to be used today. So if the challenges are financial, if there are enrollment crisis, if there is a real tendency to parochialism, if there are growing inequalities and there is also a perceived loss of relevance of the kind of quality that is being provided by universities, we need to look at the values that we want to foster for the future, and we need to strengthen any collaboration opportunities. I take 2 last minutes to just tell you where the opportunities have been identified as well. There are new means at our disposal, and we need to actually look at how these means can be capitalized on and how the new ways that have been used today can be used by all the universities around the world and not only a few. We need to ensure increased access, more equality for all, and also look at global engagement with local relevance, with all the different endeavors that we have at our disposal. Because the end result or the end goal is social and societal relevance. I'm sure that you, Jeff, will have even better points to make, and I pass the floor on to you, but these are some of the points that came out of the different surveys that were carried out and the reports published and made available. So Jeff, please, the floor is yours.
Helge, thank you so much. It's really wonderful to be with you. And Mike, great to see you. I'm thinking about how our technologies have evolved. 18 years ago, Michael Crowe, our esteemed co-panelist and president of ASU, was bringing me from Harvard to Columbia University, and we were typing on BlackBerries together to discuss this, and thinking that it was a marvel of, and it was a marvel that we could do that. And 18 years later, we have the marvel of routinely zooming around the world day by day. and I think that that's actually a great promise for the issues that we're talking about. You know, COVID has upended everything in very serious ways, but it's also accelerated things that were already present and have made them vastly more stark. And three that I think were true pre-COVID and now are even more dramatic from the point of view of higher education is first the digital issue. I'm a technophile by nature, and I believe that online and connectivity and the things that the digital world can offer are profoundly positive, but we have to use them effectively. So when the issue arises, as it does and already has several times today, that there's an unequal access to quality broadband, our task is to ensure that there's access for quality broadband for everybody, and not to, in other words, to slow the uptake of digital use for higher education, but rather to ensure that it can work effectively. I think the telecoms and the big tech companies have a major responsibility here together with the government. You cannot be a full participant in the world right now without good broadband. If you don't have it, you will fall behind, perhaps disastrously, even to the point of not being able to access healthcare or education, or to keep a job, or to have an income. So one trend that was already underway was the digitalization of our societies, but this has made it even more dramatic. The second is geopolitical. Nothing can be solved at a national or local level alone, whether it's a pandemic or climate change, or certainly war and peace, or the well-being of billions of people in the world requires global cooperation. The fact that we have a nationalist, nativist backlash underway is, in a way, not coincidental. It's just wildly wrong-headed. It's not coincidental in the sense that the tensions in the world give rise to simplistic and even paranoid tendencies, of which Trumpian politics is an example. And it's mimicked in other places in the world. But the truth is, we can't solve anything other than through global cooperation. And university networks are crucial for that. Universities cannot thrive unless they are globally connected. And by global, I don't mean the North Atlantic or the North and South of the Americas. I mean with Asia, with Africa, and across the world. So I would say that the geopolitics behooves us as universities to be international. If you look at so much of history, and especially European history over the last 1,000 years, it was networks across Europe that played the role of the diffusion of ideas of advancement, Renaissance, Enlightenment, that were so fundamentally transformative. We need that at the global scale. The third issue that was already present before COVID, but is absolutely present now, is the substance of our education. And I think that there are two huge dimensions of that substance that I would emphasize. Of course, there has been a tendency to regard education in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in the STEM fields as the lesson of our modern technological age. But I would say that while it's obvious that we need such specialties, especially given the great productivity of technological advancement, we also need two other things that are, in my view, as fundamental. One is interdisciplinarity. This is something that Mike Crowe made possible for me and for us when he devised the Earth Institute at Columbia University, and I was proud and absolutely thrilled to lead the Earth Institute for 14 years. The whole essence of the Earth Institute was that to understand sustainable development, to be able to champion it, to be able to teach it, to be able to find solutions, one needed to work across the faculties and across the disciplines, organized along problem-solving lines rather than disciplinary lines, departmental lines, or school lines. This is basic. It's not how our universities are organized, but how they need to be organized for the kinds of intellectual challenges that we face in many areas. It's not to disband the departments, but it's to say that the problems as they arise, whether it's COVID or climate change or conservation of biodiversity or inequalities, all require a deeply interdisciplinary spirit of problem solving. The second area that I would emphasize is the values. Unbelievably, in our rich country in the United States, we're dismantling humanities departments. They're going out of business. Students aren't interested, can't get a job, and so forth. But the humanities is where we learn to be good human beings. And I want to emphasize the idea of learning to be good human beings because it's an idea that goes back to my favorite philosopher, Aristotle, and actually his teacher and his teacher, Plato and Socrates, that you don't just have the human good, you have to earn it, you have to cultivate it, you have to work hard for it, you have to learn about what is good, what is right, what is decent, you have to cultivate knowledge and virtue. Well, one of the best ways to do that, by the way, is to read Aristotle or to read Plato. And yet this is what is being eliminated from curricula in the United States, this rich, often very stupid country, I would say, but very, very rich country. We're eliminating what can help make us human. And especially in our globalized world, what will make us better human beings is understanding other places in the world. So reading the Analects of Confucius, not only the Western literature, becomes absolutely as fundamental as what we used to believe of reading about our own societies narrowly structured. COVID, in my opinion, dramatically accelerates all three of these issues and indeed puts them tremendously in challenge and at risk. I would like us to learn to use online education. Of course, I love campuses. I've been at a campus for 48 years now, nonstop. So I love campuses, but they're not the only way to provide education. And mixing online with the on-site learning or multi-site learning should be the way of the 21st century. That means physical access, it means online content, it means building the capacities fundamentally to use our digital technologies well for higher education. We've been thrown into this headfirst in recent months, but I think it's rather telling that within a couple of weeks, most universities in the United States were able to move online almost seamlessly. Of course, not the way that we would have liked and would have preferred, but still there's a tremendous potential there. The SDSN, of course, champions the SDG Academy to provide online content, but we need hardware, software, skills, and thoughtfulness about the design of our programs. The second, on internationalization, we have in the United States an attack on foreign students. We have the most racist government in our modern history in power right now. It's a dangerous and despicable government, in my opinion, or the administration. And so we have an order yesterday by the US government basically pressuring foreign students to leave the United States. This is part of an overall strategy of trying to close American borders. It is a disaster by a disastrous president, but we need to defend free ideas and movement of people, and to defend our students, and to defend our international students in any part of the world, because they're under threat right now. Not as much probably elsewhere as in the United States, but in the United States, definitely under threat right now. We need to strengthen global networks of universities, again, including India, Africa, China, Europe, South America, North America, because this is our real world. And on substance, let's use the HESI initiative, and let's use SDG 4.7, which is a mandate to us. And I'll just remind us of the mandate of SDG 4.7. We are to promote the education for sustainable development, sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, a culture of peace and nonviolence, global citizenship, cultural diversity, and the cultural contributions to sustainable development. It's a very rich, wonderfully put mandate for us. It says that at the core of what we want is human decency, and that is to cultivate human decency, and that is a responsibility of education. Let me just close by saying to Nathaniel to thank him for his words, and also to say that what we find around the world is that the more unequal are the societies, the more inadequate, inept, nasty has been the response to COVID-19. The United States is the most unequal of all of the high-income countries. Brazil is the most unequal of the middle-income countries, and the two of them reflect the kind of terrible response that has been a tragedy for the populations, and especially for minority and vulnerable populations. And so if we're going to fight this pandemic, we have to do it with values first. And the values are the universality of human dignity and the need to cultivate human goodness and understanding of how to be good, contributing human beings. I believe, and I'm 48 years into it, that higher education is the right way to help lead this. And I think we need to be very dynamic and very creative, and to see global higher education as a force for good now, overcoming the digital divides, overcoming the geopolitical divides, and facing up to the challenge of a culture of decency and sustainable development. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was about to wrap up, Florencia, in a few minutes, just to thank you very much, Jeff, for this very good speech that actually touches on the many things that we face today. And you say it with many more forceful words than I could ever do. I think that you touched also on a very important point. I think we as universities individually need to fight back against all the odds and the negative impacts of COVID-19, or even the situation today. And on top of that, I believe very strongly in creative, innovative partnerships between the different networks that we've created. It can be done within HESI, it can be done amongst us. You know that last year we came in very strongly with the Association of Commonwealth Universities, also 1,000 universities, and with the AUF, Agence Universitaire de la Francophonie. So all these associations in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America need to come together And that's what we are fostering together to make the difference, so that at all the levels we lead the way into a better future together. So I thank you very much, and I'm sure that at the end of the session we have maybe an opportunity to have a little bit of discussion. Thank you. The floor is back to you, Florencia.
Thank you so much, Hilich, and thank you so much, Jeff. These are really thoughtful reflections, and I'm very, very pleased to hear. We will now to move on for the sake of keeping on time. So we have now our moderated session, Higher Education to Support Regenerative Pathways. It's my pleasure to give now the floor to Satya Tripathi, UN's Assistant Secretary General and Secretary of the UN Environment Management Group. Thank you, Satya.
Thank you, Florencia. Are you able to see and hear me well?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And greetings, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to be moderating this session for you. We will be discussing something very critical in this session as to what will be the likely impact of COVID-19 on higher education, and then what new ideas should we consider going forward. I don't want to stand between you and the brilliant panelists we have this morning or afternoon in different parts of the world. But I want to frame the conversation as quickly as I can in the next 2 minutes so that we stay to the point. The first being that the pandemic of COVID-19, of course, we are all well aware of it, depending on your level of interest. You already know how terrible it is, or how it is spreading like wildfire across the planet, and how it is going up and going down in numbers, in active cases, in recovered cases, and in death rate. And so the researchers have everything they need in terms of building their simulations and models, and hopefully we will see the end of it in a few months. But what is even more important is the pandemic of fake news, the blurring of the lines between right and wrong, as Jeff pointed out so eloquently. And how can higher education stay true to its calling, which is providing the right kind of foundational basis for us to think independently for ourselves, think democratically in terms of options and choices, and that of course translates into good policy and a healthy people and planet. And so that's why it is so crucial, this conversation, to SDGs and sustainability. Now, in terms of new ideas, what can we do going forward? Because we are at a very, very critical point of time in the history of our planet. Despite COVID-19 and some encouraging news, I don't see it encouraging, but it looks encouraging at times that we have a little bit more cleaner air or water in different parts of the planet. But it is also a fact that global warming continues unabated. We have seen the highest amounts of carbon concentration in the atmosphere at about 416 ppm. And so the situation will only get worse. COVID-19 only adds to the complexities, or perhaps provides a little relief. And so in that, what can higher education do? What can students, because they are the champions of today and tomorrow. So what can they do, the young people? And how can governments work with the young population to provide the right kind of impetus for higher education that would seed the kind of ideas and thinking we need to ensure that we have a healthy planet moving forward. So let me stop there and invite, we'll start with a group of students, and they'll be speaking for roughly 3 minutes each. Unfortunately, I know the young people have a lot of ideas and they would have a lot to contribute, but unfortunately we have very little time, and I would like to stick to the timelines given by our organizers. So let me start by asking Zamzam Ibrahim, and she's the co-founder of Students Organizing for Sustainability, and she's the former national president and vice president of the UK National Union of Students, truly a leader in her own right. She helped create campaigns like Teach the Future, a national campaign to reform the entire education system around the climate crisis. So my question to you, Jamjam, is what are students calling for in the UK, and how are universities responding to your call for change? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Azam Ibrahim, and I'm the president of Students Organising for Sustainability, SOS UK. Thank you so much for inviting me today. It's an honor to be with you. And I think I'm going to start with essentially saying that my vision is clear, that we must radically reform our education system in response to the climate crisis and the ecological emergency. Our society is unjust, and the crisis like climate change and COVID-19 are alike only serves further expose the immense divides that exist already in our communities. But why is it that constantly we see that the most highly educated people are the ones who make the worst decisions for the people and the planet? And I believe all leaders are making bad decisions because they've been badly educated. It's not good enough that our education system year on year produces great graduates who are simply ill-equipped to tackle the challenges that they face. So alongside the UK student climate strikers last year, we launched a campaign called Teach the Future, and we developed 3 key asks for our government. The first ask was that we need to review our entire education system from primary school through to university to understand how students are being prepared to mitigate, abate, and end the climate emergency in the ecological crisis. Second, we need to see a sustainability content and methodology included in our teacher training. Currently, 3/4 of teachers, 75% of teachers, feel ill-equipped to be able to teach about climate change. And number 3, early this year, we launched a Climate Emergency Education Act, the first ever education bill that was written by students. And we need to target funding for educational institutions to improve the sustainability practice, to improve our sustainability practices, both in the classroom, but also where making educational buildings net zero. We cannot continue to learn about sustainability in unsustainable buildings. And we're working with partners around the globe. In recent weeks, we met with student campaigns in Poland, in Nigeria, in India, and Latvia. And there's one common message that continues to emerge. The education system must step up to the plate. I'm tired of the lack of innovation and change. I'm tired of the lack of to understand the challenges that we face. Earlier this year, we announced that 50% of UK universities have now committed to divest from fossil fuels. And that's a massive achievement, but where's the other half? Where is the genuine leadership on this? And I'll tell you, it's coming from students and young people. The climate strikers over the last 18 months have really shifted the conversation on climate more than we could have ever imagined. Young people understand the intersection between race, class, and climate. They know that education is the key to creating a more just and sustainable future. And that's why we must work together as students, as staff, as academics, as educators, as policymakers to shift the education system to serve us for the better, to create educational environments where students are genuinely equipped to tackle the crisis that we face. And in doing so, I know that we'll be able to have a future of generation of leaders that will do a much better job than the many of those who are in power today.
Thank you, Jamjam. Moving on, I would like to invite Amélie Deloche, who's a student member of the French collective Ecological Awakening and is working to reshape higher education in France. And she's a master's student in ecological transition at the Business School Grenoble École de Management. Amélie, what are the main risks of ecological awakening movement and what are you seeking to achieve?
Hello, can you see me well?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me to speak. So I am a member of the French collective called Ecological Awakening, pour un réveil écologique in French, created 2 years ago. We believe that as students and young graduates, we have a key role to play in transforming education and choosing jobs consistent with the challenges we are facing. So concerning higher education, we made the following alarming observation. Despite the environmental emergency, many students complete their studies without ever having been trained to deal with the ecological transition issues, which will be a key and crucial competence in the near future. In my school, for example, we are still taught the current capitalistic growth model without ever questioning it. But this model we know is obsolete in relation to current climate issues. Higher education must therefore evolve and deliver programs that measure up to the ecological challenge. We think that given the urgency of this transformation, students must mobilize and help their institutions to change. This observation is the basis of the action of Ecological Awakening, to foster a better integration of environmental issues into higher education training through a twofold approach. By calling on the political world to ensure that ecological issues are integrated into all higher education programs, and by encouraging students to act within their own institutions, thanks to a platform that brings together all our resources and tools to meet the challenge of integrating ecological issues into their university courses. So universities are faced with a double challenge: changing their courses and training their teachers on climate issues. Moreover, they also must target courses that are no longer relevant with climate change issues and the shortage of resources, and should be removed from the curriculums. In recent months and years, higher education institutions have been opening master degrees on sustainable development or ecological transitions. We think this is good, but it only attracts students who are already convinced by climate issues. The ecological transition concerns all sectors. It must therefore be taught to all, regardless of students' appetite for ecology, and not just as an optional class. So the issues of ecological transitions must be present in all the training courses in universities, and it must be the priority today of all the universities worldwide. So as a conclusion, steps have been made in France and all over the world, but there is still a long way to go, and ambitions must be commensurate with the climate and social emergency we are facing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. Let me invite Rituraj Yadav, who's from Nepal, and he's a climate researcher at Idaho State University and serves as a member of the Sustainability Club at his university. And my question to you, Rituraj, is what barriers are students facing on campuses to learn or to take action on these issues?
Hi, can you hear me correctly?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I would like to thank the Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Satya Tripathi, for introducing me, and the organizers of the HESI for having me here so that I can learn and share my comments. The critical issues I feel that youth are currently facing at the university, practicing sustainability, the first I think they are facing is lack of sustainability education. Despite the recent progresses that we have made, there's still a lack of education regarding the concepts of sustainability in higher education, and students are not taught enough about the concepts of sustainability and its practices. In addition, where it is taught, there are fewer rooms or spaces outside available of the lectures or classrooms where students could practice the sustainability and live a more greener life. The second issue that I feel the most youths are facing are lack of incentives. Youths are not properly incentivized at the universities enough to practice the sustainability at their campuses. More funding should be, I think, deployed there, or their voices should be more raised and heard correctly at the university administration so that they're incentivized towards taking steps. The third issue I think that youths are facing would be the lack of enabling environment. What I mean by that is that universities should look forward to developing an enabling environment to teach the concepts of sustainability to the students, and also brand the sustainability at the core of the university administration, so that students and youth would reflect on that to take actions. In addition, this enabling environment would promote youth to raise their concerns regarding sustainability, and when these concerns are raised, they could be heard and addressed. So I feel these three are the primary concerns or the barriers that youth are facing towards practicing the sustainability in the higher education. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rituraj. I think you make very valid points, especially on incentivizing young people to do the right thing. Many a times we have these thoughts on the top of our minds, but we just neither have the opportunity or the resources to make them work. Let me now invite Dr. Michael Crowe. It gives me great pleasure to introduce him. He's the president of Arizona State University. Under his leadership, ASU has become one of the world's foremost research universities and has been lauded as the most innovative school in the US. They're a student-centric university that has 25 new transdisciplinary schools in place, such as the School of Earth and Space Exploration and the Julianne Wrigley Global Institute of Sustainability. President Crowe, the floor is yours to share your views on how higher education needs to evolve to meet the needs of the future. I would also request you to kindly focus a bit of your time on what these young champions were talking about, the kind of constraints that confront us as we try to make education more fit for purpose. President Crowe, the floor is yours. Please take about 10 to 12 minutes to finish your remarks. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Satya. And let me say the three students that we just heard from, each coming in from different perspectives and different experiences and different cultural backgrounds, couldn't be more right. Their concern about our lack of educational foundation, their concern about our lack of transdisciplinarity in terms of thinking, our lack of capability, our lack of preparation of teachers, these are really at the root of all things. And so let me sort of try to put my comments into perspective. COVID-19 is but an early example of the complexities that are highly complexified, highly global, highly connected world with all kinds of variables going on all at the same time are likely to increasingly face going forward. Think of it as just but a simple example of what human-driven climate change without sustainable trajectories can ultimately contribute to, either things just like this, exactly like this, or even broader and more damaging. And so it should have everyone's attention right now, is what I'm saying. What we don't realize in the higher education sector, in my view, is that the reason that we're inadequately prepared to advance a sustainable set of outcomes, the reason that we're still arguing at the level and in the ways that we're arguing about human-driven global climate change, is exactly the way that our students, Ms. Ibrahim and the others, outlined, and that is that we're inadequate in our intellectual design. And so I would even argue, and I think I'm trying to say this, and I hope that the people that are listening today listen to this very, very carefully. We are where we are, in my view, not only because of the nature of politics and capitalism, but at the root of it all is us ourselves, the universities. We are inadequate. We are wholly universally inadequate to what lies ahead in terms of the future of our species and our relationship with this beautiful planet that we're all dependent on. And let me outline 5 arguments for that. First, I think that we're inadequate in terms of our self-awareness as an institution of higher education, or as institutions of higher education, of the net outcome of our design. Why do we have business schools teaching economic models that are in fact working against our own sustainability? Why do we have a lack of communication between chemists and biologists and economists and engineers and philosophers and historians and everyone else who sit inside university environments arguing with each other in ways that are not just about intellectual development, but are in some ways inane? And so we have never thought in ourselves, we've never been adequately focused on our own self-awareness to understand that, in fact, our highly disciplinary design, as Jeff Sachs indicated, our highly structured way of doing things, our way in which theories evolve, our ways in which faculty are recognized, the ways in which knowledge is advanced, the net outcome of all of that is exactly where we are in terms of a non-sustainable trajectory. The non-sustainable trajectory that we're on is a product of us, point number 1. Point number 2, that same university enterprise, that same higher education enterprise is inadequate in terms of its production of systems level tools. We're an observer. We're obsessed with reductionism. We're obsessed with the belief that somehow if we can only understand everything down to the atomic scale, if we could only understand everything at the genetic and subgenetic mechanism, that somehow we would be able to find the solution to all things. And so the answer is no. Reductionism is not the method by which we will gain an understanding of the interconnectedness of the systems of the planet and the role of humans. It's only through our ability to emerge systems level thinking of equal intellectual stature and of equal intellectual value. Third, our universities and our higher education systems in the United States and in other parts of the world are completely inadequate in terms of their intellectual diversification, their cultural diversification, their socioeconomic diversification, their lack of recognition of indigenous cultures and indigenous knowledge, the dismissal of entire cultural paradigms, all around this notion of somehow there being one path and one trajectory and one route forward. Well, there isn't. And this lack of diversification, lack of women in science, technology, engineering, and math, lack of cultural diversification at universities, which actually is accelerating, not decelerating. That lack of diversification is accelerating if you look around the world, is in fact limiting our overall intellectual contribution. We have a narrower and narrower intellectual contribution, not a broader and broader intellectual contribution. So that's the third factor that I think is a key part of the design here, design limits. I think fourth, and I would probably rank this actually first, universities really don't care as institutions about much of anything. They care about bringing in faculty, they care about hiring faculty, they care about having students, they care about their budgets, they care about arguing with the government to get more money, but they don't really care about sustainable outcomes as an institution. They do not take activist positions, intellectual activist positions, as Jeff has built his career around, and some of the rest of us have been fighting for decades. We just sit back and say, well, we did what we could do. We educated the people we could educate. We put out the theories that we could put out, and we're really sorry that the politicians are too stupid, or too lazy, or the businesses are too greedy or too selfish. And so this notion of not taking some sense of responsibility, we don't realize that it is in fact our own lack of transdisciplinary capability, our own lack of our own lack of diversification. It's our own lack of systems level thinking. It's our own obsession with reductionism that actually has brought us to this point. So when we look out and we're concerned about rapidly rising CO2 levels, or we're concerned about the overwhelming human consumption and manifestly negative overwhelming consumption of fresh water, or the elimination of the entire fishing stock, or conservation disruptions on a global scale of geological time, we don't realize that we're responsible for that. If you know you've contributed to something and it's not going well, if you're a responsible person or a responsible institution, you change what you're doing. We don't have much change in what we're doing. Fifth on my list is universities are archaic, at least in the European model, archaic, slow, non-adaptable, non-technologically sophisticated institutions. We're not moving at the speed of climate change. We're not moving at the speed of complexity, of complexification. We're too slow. We have no sense of time. We might argue about something for 15 years, and in the same 15 years, the Ross ice shelf cracked off of Antarctica and led to some massive change in the ocean circulation cycle, and thus impacting climate, et cetera, et cetera. So the 5 points here: inadequate self-awareness, inadequate emergence of systems level thinking, wholly inadequate diversification of the university itself, no sense of moral duty or moral responsibility as institutions, and inadequate speed and adaptability. If we don't change those things, there's not going to be any climate adaptation or climate change. There's not going to be movement back towards a sustainable trajectory, because we're not producing the people, the ideas, the tools, the mechanisms, the devices, the theories, the assumptions. The young students who are just presenting, they get this. They understand that. They enter a university which is in fact an archaic institution, incapable of having self-awareness relative to where we're headed. So what are we doing at my institution? We've done everything and then some, and still it's a slow slog. We've built the Global Futures Laboratory, the Global Institute of Sustainability. We're dramatically lowering our carbon footprint. We have thousands and thousands of students. We changed the design of engineering. We changed parts of the design of our business schools. We built a new school on the future of innovation and society, a new school of sustainability. And we're still moving too slowly. And so I think the point I'd like to make to the audience here is, let's listen to these students. They have a sense, they have an awareness, and they are able to see immediately upon entry into our bureaucratic institutions that we're inadequate to the assignment. And we ought to take that as a serious, serious criticism. Now, let me tell you what's happening right now. So right now, and COVID sort of expresses this, we are largely, as colleges and universities, place-based institutions, driven where we think that excellence is a function of who we exclude, and this is true all over the world, where our structure, our technology, our flexibility, our adaptability are completely inadequate. So my message to ministers, to UN leaders, to SDSN leaders, to higher education leaders, to students, to faculty is that let's shake it up. It is time to shake the foundation of the universities and have them raise their hand and say, yes, we want to be responsible for the climate outcome of our planet, for our species outcome, for the sustainability of our species. And to do that, we're gonna have to change everything down to the root. So I think that's about 12 minutes and I'll stop there.
Okay. Thank you, President Crowe. I like the way you framed it because this is something that I've experienced as someone who's been in the UN system for a while, and I would say I've roughly seen about 10,000 colleagues directly as part of my supervisory role in different places on the planet. And one of the things that I have often lamented about is that we get the most brightest of minds who know what they know, and what they don't know about is the entire universe.
Right.
Which is sometimes so appalling because they come from the Ivy League schools and they're the smartest minds, but they see the other part of the education as inconsequential. They're too focused, too smart on what they know. And that's a challenge. I think you've articulated that very well. So how do we make the universities more adequate in terms of the challenges that you see, and how would you, what would be your advice if you were to tell them something in a few lines that this is what you really need to do to change course? Thank you.
Right. I agree with your comment, by the way, of these exquisitely educated reductionists who not only focus all their energy towards that, and we certainly need some people that do that, but they demean and undermine the emergence of other intellectual paradigms, which are deeply needed. And so I think the best advice that I could give in a university, and I'll use an American colloquialism, if you're not focused on sustainability and sustainable outcomes, you're not worth your salt as a university. If you're not taking sustainability as a core intellectual objective equal to the ideals of democracy in terms of justice and liberty and equality, if sustainability isn't a moral value which is built into the core of your institution as an outcome, then you're just going to sit back and watch us move forward into these very unsustainable outcomes. And that means then, as one of the students had said, every student, every teacher, if every teacher was sustainability trained, if every teacher on the planet knew what it meant in terms of how the planet works, we'd have a different outcome. But we don't have that because we have to argue with people about whether or not that should be taught. And if you have to argue with people about whether or not that should be taught as opposed to how it should be taught, now we've got a real problem. So we need to move past the whether and to the how, we also need to find a way to realize that most universities around the planet, I've been to universities in 50 different countries, and am well aware of the acceptance of these archaic models. Universities should be places where students and faculty gather to create learning environments in which ideas are produced that have never been produced before, as well as the learning process itself. But in addition, if they become closed and sequestered places, unable to project via technology to the broader population of hundreds of millions or billions of people, then they can't move quickly enough to produce the kinds of changes that we need. If teachers get sent out at 21 or 22 years old as a teacher, and that's it, that's the last contact they had with their university, as opposed to being in constant renewal and constant learning development over the entirety of their 50 or 60 year career, then we failed. And so what we need is we need to completely reconceptualize our universities, something that we've been working on very hard here in this model that we have at ASU.
Thank you so much. I think we're waiting for Dr. Rajiv Kumar to join us. And as we do that, let me try and invite a question or two until they're trying to set up a system. Unfortunately, he had a cabinet meeting with the Prime Minister, and he had to be there, but he's out of that now, and he's going to join us.
Coming on the bottom down there, I see him.
Okay, so they're signing him on. Let me see if he has joined in. Otherwise, I can start with the question. They said they'll let me know. But anyway, let me start with a question. Anyone in the audience? Oh, Dr. Rajiv Kumar is already there. So let me start by welcoming Dr. Kumar. And Dr. Kumar, we've been discussing some of the most critical challenges facing the higher education universe on the planet, and what we need to do at this point of time to be better and to be more fit for purpose. And as for our audience, Dr. Rajiv Kumar, who's the Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog. Niti stands for the National Institution of Transformation of India. So he's also, I mean, this is, his designation does not tell you that he's also the Planning Minister of India. And he's the Chancellor of Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics, which is one of the preeminent institutions in India. He's worked with industry on economics, finance, and he's been a professor in multiple institutions, worked with the Asian Development Bank in a leading role for nearly 10 years. And more importantly, he studied in so many different universities. His PhD was from one of the best universities in India, then his DPhil was from Oxford. So having traveled the world, both for education and in terms of your work, you are perfectly placed, Dr. Kumar, to give us your perspective on how higher education should evolve to meet the needs of the future. You have roughly 10 minutes, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Satya. Good morning, everybody. Apologies for not being there present for the whole session. Just a whole series of work and meeting going on here. But greatly delighted to take part in this forum, and which was established in Rio de Janeiro in 2012 and has done some splendid work to give direction to the higher education system globally. Let me go straight on to the 3 points that I want to make. One, and as a prelude to that, let me say first that, of course, we are in very special times, but such special times can always be and must always be used as opportunities for giving ourselves new directions, new momentum, and a new energy to do things that we haven't done in the past. And I think this is what we have to do today, going forward. And the first thing that I do want to emphasize is that higher education, the crisis has shown, and India very much so, that we need a multidisciplinary approach to higher education. And because I don't think we can a kind of a siloed approach, a very linear, a sort of narrowly focused approach in any discipline, subject, etc., can lead us to breakthroughs that we need today to deal with the present crisis, and also with the technological challenges that the world is faced with. I think, because I think that's the important part. We are in the midst of one of the most tumultuous periods of our times that we have ever seen, and this particular the virus has only exacerbated or accentuated that. So I think we need higher education which is cross-cutting, which is dimensional, which is telling the students to think horizontally and to connect with others to find new solutions. I think that's the important one that I find, and I think this is something that we are trying in India, and we are what we have done. Therefore, is that our entire new education policy is now being crafted, and a big committee spent nearly 1.5 years to design that, and now the government is acting on it. And here I think what's more relevant, therefore, is that the autonomy of the higher education institutions has to be guaranteed. Because this sort of flexibility, this sort of multidisciplinary approach would not come if there was a centralized curriculum and pedagogy and and direction given. So I think that's the first point that I would want to make. The second point that I thought I should make is more related to technology. We now know that we are in the danger of artificial intelligence-powered machines replacing not just routine but very complex human functions and forms. And I think and we now may face a situation where the new technologies for the first time may force young people to switch from one career and one vocation to another very quickly, because they might find that the vocation that they chose has simply disappeared because the AI and the deep learning, machine learning, etc., has made their job redundant. So I think it is important, especially at the higher education level, to provide the mental agility and the learning capabilities and the appreciation of of other forms of learning, etc. There. So I think what I'm referring to, therefore, is that maybe we need to go back to to our philosophical foundations as to what are we trying to achieve and what is our sort of objective, as it were, in life. And I think that's where an ethical basis for our education I think is extremely important, and that sometimes I find has been missing in the higher education courses. And I think this is important, therefore, for us in the higher education field to take an integrated, holistic view of the world and all its different different traditions, as it were, to learn from each other, and with the focus on providing the agility to the students that are there in the higher education. That's the second point. And the third and the last point, and I think I should make, is that we now in higher education, the trend that had begun to separate R&D from education, for some of the universities, especially in emerging economies, to become, if you like, training or teaching shops and not research and development places, and the dichotomy appearing between the two has now to be reconfigured and brought back together. I think there cannot be, and I think some of the best universities in the world are there and are ranked so high because of their ability to combine the two, the R&D and the teaching and the training. I think that's the important one. And here, I think if you're going to combine R&D and the teaching and the growth and the mental agility that you have, one of the key things would be for us to re-look at our relationship with nature, especially in higher education systems. In India, we have a very proud old tradition of teaching, taking nature as our friend and believing that we live in and with nature, and we don't develop science to conquer nature. And I think that is where, again, a redirection, a reorientation of higher education is needed, so that how can we think of ourselves as located within nature, which is we are trying to, in some sense, augment, enhance, and make nature more benevolent with our interaction, rather than leave arid zones of climate change affected world which, and be proud that we have come out of a higher education system with that kind of capability. The capability that we should come out from of the higher education institution should be imbued with the thought of how we as Homo sapiens can go towards one Homo spiritualis, and therefore in that context also become friends and partners of nature as we go together. Satya, just those three very brief remarks. I hope they were relevant to our discourse that you had during the day. And as I said once more, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar. But sir, let me ask a follow-up question. I mean, you framed it so well that that we shouldn't just be worried about the arid landscape that we see on the surface of the planet, but we should also be worried about the arid landscapes in our minds, in our thought processes, where we leave out a lot of very important things that are crucial to our existence. The latest IPBES report tells us that of the 7.8 million species that inhabit the planet, we are running the risk or a near certainty of losing about 1 million of those species, with little understanding of what they actually do for us. There are those manifest ones like the bees, where we know that we can't do any pollination without them. And so there are those that we understand, but there are 1 million others that we hardly even understand or comprehend. So if governments were to do a few things to really change the course of higher education, in very brief terms, what would you recommend governments all over the world to do so? Thank you.
Satya, I think the one thing that governments, higher education is, different, is divided into compartments, humanities and social sciences and biological sciences and natural sciences, etc. But I think all of these, if I were to make one generic statement, which is that whatever you study in whichever field you are, you should be connected organically to the realities in which you are working. So it's not just a theoretical construct that you build, but you should be, so therefore the higher education content, curriculum, pedagogy should have examples, from things around you which connect you. And this is again a tradition that is started by Mahatma Gandhi, which was the Nai Talim, the tradition of Nai Talim, which has said that whatever we study, whatever we do, we need to work with the local surroundings. So, if we are local, we can be more global. So I think the higher education, should emphasize, if you like, localization. That's the one part. And the second part, I think, because of the artificial intelligence that is coming, all higher education institutions must now have a course on empathy, on how we can appreciate what the other is doing, and come to the point where we stop distinguishing, me from the other. And that's that's been the spiritual tradition. So I think those are the two most important. But but more in more sort of prosaic terms, I think governments must, if you're going to do this, and if you don't green your campus, then of course you're going to be defeated. So so therefore campuses must be green. Campuses must be, fully flexible. Campuses should be such that allow for the greatest, freedom to the children, to attend what they like, and to the teachers to teach in the manner that they like. I think so. In that sense, a appreciation of human freedom and liberty at the same time, and again to come back to and an empathy with each other. I think that's the way. And governments can do this. Otherwise, it won't happen. The governments must signal, by telling the institutions, look, how about changing a course, in this direction. That's my suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. I think you put it very well, and it resonates very well with what Jeff Sachs and President Crowe of ASU. As you know, ASU is considered the most innovative university in the United States. They have 25 interdisciplinary programs, and you're talking about interdisciplinary learning. And so all three of you have talked about the importance of ethics, mooring in ethics in the learning process, not just teaching philosophy or political science or international relations. but how does it relate to the world at large, to the planet itself, and empathy for everything living and breathing and the immediate environment, not just the built environment in terms of materialism, but also the natural environment. Because without the natural environment, the built environment will just perish within minutes and days, as we know. So with that, let me revert to Zamzam and ask her, I will request everybody to stay on because we'll be wrapping up in 5 minutes. And ask Zamzam, and you've heard some of the most important thought leaders in the world, both from the academic field and government. So as someone who's led the UK Students' Union, and with deep anchoring in or empathy for Mother Nature, do you see hope?
Thanks for that question. I think, I mean, as young people have mobilized globally for the last 18 months, calling for climate, for inevitably climate justice, I think it is hard not to have hope when you see those young people who are going to be the future leaders really taking that stance. But actually, us having this conversation and us being able to map out a clear way for how to really build a just and sustainable world, we all fundamentally must have hope to be able to do that. And I think one of the things that have been highlighted today quite several times is that in order to be able to build a just and sustainable world, we need to take action, and a lot of the action that's being taken isn't happening fast enough, and it's just isn't happening with the urgent care that it needs to be happening with. And so for me, as a young leader, working with thousands and thousands of young people all around across the UK, but also globally connecting with national unions across the world. For me, of course, I'm hopeful to see how young people are taking it to the agenda and understanding how it is the most fundamentally important thing of our lifetimes. And if the leaders, if the world leaders won't take the action they need to, then it's our role to make them take that action.
Thank you, Zamzam. And let me try to. We'll be running out of time in 3 minutes, so let me try to wrap up in 2, and then pass it back to Florencia. Our conversations today have focused around 3 key areas: the challenge, and the vehicle, and the way forward. The challenge, it has been articulated so well that the COVID-19, as bad a problem as it is, as significant a problem as it is just a precursor of things to come. We know now, the UNEP just published a flagship report on zoonotic diseases, and we know it for a fact now that in the last few decades, 75% of the new diseases are zoonotic diseases, which has primarily happened because we as the human species have taken over the habitat of every other species that inhabits the planet, and it was something bound to happen with pathogens jumping from animals to humans because we've taken over their spaces. And so if that is the foundational issue to deal with, how do we change course? How do we step back from the brink, both in terms of achieving Agenda 2030 in the next 10 years, and also turning the Titanic around in the next 10 years in terms of climate change and both the mitigation and the adaptation challenge. That brings me to the question of the vehicle. What then is the vehicle? And I think higher education is the most potent vehicle to make that happen, because it is about young people, it is about their future, it is about the intergenerational equity, and how do we empower young people to be the true leaders of a different sustainability paradigm that will ultimately work towards saving the planet. And in that, the thoughts that have echoed throughout, that students need to be incentivized, and it is important to focus on innovation, artificial intelligence, and we need to walk the talk. Universities, as President Crowe so well pointed out, that universities cannot really focus on how good their students are and are they getting the best minds to teach. or if they're getting the right kind of financial metrics to be a sustainable institution in financial terms. But more importantly, what are they doing in terms of advancing sustainability around the planet, in building empathy in their student community to think differently, to think better. And without that, as much as we applaud the fact that universities are trying to be sustainable in their internal processes, but that is certainly not going to be enough. It is about empowering every young student that comes through the portals of these universities, the tens of millions of them across the planet, and making them, helping them realize the potential, the championship potential that exists within them to step out of the university, or even while within them, to become mentors to those that really want to change but do not know how. And I think with that, I will wrap up. Thank you all to our magnificent panelists for the brilliant remarks and more importantly, your empathetic remarks. And I'll hand the mic back to Florencia to close this session. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Satya, and the wonderful speakers. I could not imagine a better reflection to end. And I think we have very thoughtful reflections and sharing, as well as a very urgent call for action. So just a final reminder to everyone that on the 15th of July, we're going to host a HESI roundtable discussion to ensure that we bring this conversation to actionable next steps. So that will be 15 July, 8 to 10. Apart from that, again, a thank you to everyone for joining us today, and our remarkable speakers for sharing so generously their expertise and their reflections. And a big thank you also to all the HESI partners and the organizing team for the great work. I will now like to remind you that I hope that you will all remain on the webinar to watch the live streaming of the International Green Awards, which will happen in about 15 minutes, and we're going to have a break in between. And I think it's a great, HESI is a proud supporter of the International Green Gown Awards, and it's a great opportunity to get inspired by the leading institutions across the world that are achieving wonderful things. So the ceremony will take about 40 minutes and we'll start in a few minutes. I see Sam there, so we'll pass it on to him. He might have some final reflections. So thank you so much, everyone.
I just wanted to give huge appreciation for everyone that's listened to this event, but also who's participated. There are 4 things I think we're going to take forward from this discussion that have come through. The first is the message from Professor Crowe about how we need to radically reform the education systems. What we have right now needs a rethink. Also, it's not just about whether we should teach, but how do we teach about sustainability across all levels of education? And with that, we'll take that forward with UNESCO, particularly through the SDG 4.7. But the value of interdisciplinary thinking and kind of breaking down barriers between departments is something that we will also explore. But really, I think the last words from the minister from India about the need to think about the value of nature, the value of empathy, and also from Professor Sachs about the values also of learning about civics and how we are better people in the world is also important as well. So I think for me, I'd like to say, again, thank you very much to everyone that's participated. I think there'll be some big new ideas coming out from HESI off the back of this. And we look forward to following up with all of you over the course of the coming days and weeks. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the International Green Gown Awards 2020 and our first ever virtual ceremony. The International Green Gown Awards are delivered by the EAUC, which is the Sustainability Leadership Alliance for the UK and Ireland, and they're supported by the United Nations Environment Programme. We are delighted to be working in partnership with the Association of Commonwealth Universities, l'Agence Universitaire de la Francophonie, International Association of Universities and the Higher Education Sustainability Initiative.
Bienvenue aux International Green Gown Awards 2020 et à notre première cérémonie virtuelle. Les International Green Gown Awards sont décernés par EAUC, the Sustainability Leadership Alliance for the UK and Ireland, et soutenus par le Programme des Nations Unies pour l'Environnement. Nous sommes ravis de travailler en partenariat avec l'Association des universités du Commonwealth, l'Agence universitaire de la francophonie, l'Association internationale des universités et l'Initiative pour la durabilité de l'enseignement supérieur.
It's great to see so many of you joining this celebration of the world's universities and colleges. As we start to recover from the devastating COVID-19 pandemic, the contribution universities and colleges make to society has never been more clear or more needed. University and college staff and students have been a beacon of light in the response to COVID-19, responding with great commitment, agility, and leadership. We have seen staff and students contributing to the challenge in so many ways, being the scientific experts, using university labs for testings and vaccine development, manufacturing protective equipment, providing accommodation for health workers, rapidly moving teaching online, and securing previously unattainable carbon reduction targets. How do we take all that is good here and secure equal, collective, international commitment and action to achieve a net zero emissions future and the global goals?
C'est un plaisir de vous voir réunis si nombreux pour célébrer ensemble l'engagement des universités et établissements d'enseignement supérieur à travers le monde. Alors que nous commençons tout juste à nous relever de la pandémie dévastatrice de COVID-19, la contribution des universités et des établissements d'enseignement supérieur à la société n'a jamais été aussi claire et nécessaire. Le personnel et les étudiants des universités et des collèges ont été une source d'inspiration et d'espoir dans les réponses de la COVID-19, réagissant avec beaucoup d'engagement, d'agilité et de leadership. Nous avons vu le personnel et les étudiants contribuer aux défis de nombreuses manières, en tant qu'experts scientifiques, en utilisant les laboratoires universitaires pour les tester le développement de vaccins, en fabriquant des équipements de protection, en fournissant des logements aux travailleurs de la santé, en faisant évoluer rapidement l'enseignement en ligne et en garantissant des objectifs de réduction du carbone jusqu'alors irréalisables. Comment pouvons-nous capitaliser sur ces réussites pour assurer la mise en place d'une dynamique d'engagement et d'action collective internationale équitable entre tous les pays en faveur d'un avenir zéro émission nette et de la réalisation des objectifs de développement durable?
As we prepare to come out of lockdown, the International Green Gown Awards are a powerful platform bringing together universities and colleges across the world to mobilise our voice, strengthen our response to the climate and ecological crisis. The awards show the world the sustainability leadership of our students, our researchers, our teachers, and our campus managers. But even more importantly, the Green Gown Awards are a way to inspire university and college students and staff to learn from the Green Gown Award winners tonight and to multiply and scale on a global level the best practice you're about to see. Our graduates will inherit a rapidly changing climate and a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous future. So, one day and one day soon, we must be confident that every graduate going out into the world and making decisions influenced by their time spent on our campuses and in our lecture halls, that they have the understanding, the skills, the behaviours and the values to actively shape a better, more fair and more sustainable world.
Alors que nous nous apprêtons à sortir du confinement, les International Green Gown Awards sont une puissante plateforme qui rassemble des universités et écoles du monde entier pour mobiliser notre voix et renforcer notre réponse à la crise climatique et écologique. Les prix montrent au monde entier le leadership de nos étudiants, de nos chercheurs, de nos enseignants et de nos responsables de campus en matière de développement durable. Mais plus important encore, les Green Gown Awards, trophées des campus responsables en français, sont un moyen d'encourager tous les étudiants et le personnel des universités et des établissements d'enseignement supérieur à s'inspirer des lauréats de ce soir et à multiplier et diffuser à travers le monde les meilleures pratiques que vous allez voir. Nos diplômés hériteront d'un climat en évolution rapide et d'un avenir volatile, incertain, complexe et ambigu. Nous devons donc être sûrs qu'un jour et bientôt, chaque diplômé qui se rendra dans le monde et prendra des décisions influencées par le temps qu'il aura passé sur son campus et dans les amphis de son établissement aura le niveau de compréhension, les compétences, les comportements et les valeurs nécessaires pour façonner activement un monde meilleur, plus juste et plus durable.
So let's start the awards. I would like to welcome our host for the evening, Sonia Perez, the Climate Commission Officer from EAUC, and Karina Mucheli of the Education and Youth Unit of the United Nations Environment Programme, based in Kenya.
Commençons la cérémonie. J'aimerais souhaiter la bienvenue à nos hôtes pour notre cérémonie, Sonia Perez, responsable de la Commission Climat de OAUC et Karina Mucheli de l'Unité Éducation et Jeunesse des Nations Unies pour l'Environnement basée au Kenya.
Thank you very much, Ian. Welcome everyone to the International Green Gown Awards ceremony. The ceremony will also be available on the website for those who are unable to join us now. I would like to first welcome our partners for the International Green Gown Awards ceremony. We have Alex Wright from the Association of Commonwealth Universities, Georges Malamou from l'Agence Universitaire de la Francophonie, and Hillage Van Land from the International Association of Universities. So they will be announcing the winners for each of the categories. So the International Green Gown Awards are our opportunity to not only celebrate sector innovation and achievement, but to also show global sustainability leadership and the importance of education to achieving a sustainable future for us all. The awards are aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, with all finalists having identified their top 4 goals that their applications particularly deliver against, which also shows the impact that education has on a global scale.
Merci beaucoup, Ian. Bienvenue à la cérémonie de remise des prix des International Green Gown Awards. Bienvenue à tous ceux qui sont ici présents avec nous, mais aussi à ceux qui nous regardent. Cette cérémonie est filmée pour tous ceux qui n'ont pas pu se joindre à nous ce soir. J'aimerais vous présenter nos partenaires pour cette soirée des International Green Gown Awards. Alex Wright de l'Association des universités du Commonwealth, Georges Malamou de l'Agence universitaire de la francophonie et enfin Hillage Van Land de l'Association internationale des universités. Les International Green Gown Awards ne sont pas seulement une opportunité de célébrer l'innovation et les réalisations du secteur, ce sont également l'occasion de valoriser le leadership mondial en matière de développement durable et l'importance de l'éducation pour assurer un avenir durable pour nous tous. Les prix sont alignés sur les objectifs de développement durable des Nations Unies et tous les finalistes ont identifié les 4 ODD principaux auxquels le projet participe tout particulièrement afin de montrer l'impact de l'éducation sur une échelle globale.
Now, on to announcing our International Green Gown Award winners. We have 3 categories. So we have Benefiting Society, Student Engagement, and Sustainability Institution of the Year. And you know, there are just so many great teams out there who are championing sustainability initiatives at their institutions. And the level of leadership, drive, and commitment that was demonstrated is truly, truly outstanding. With so many fantastic projects taking place across the world, it makes the job of choosing an outright international winner extremely difficult. We thank each and every one of you for sharing your inspirational sustainability projects, and we wish you all the best. And we thank the judges who had the difficult job of deciding the winners. So for each category, we will first announce the names of the finalists, then the highly commended, and then the winner. And then we will play the winner's video afterwards. So come on, get tweeting, and please use @GreenGowns.
Passons maintenant à l'annonce des lauréats des International Green Gown Awards. Il y a 3 catégories internationales: impact positif sur la société, implication des étudiants et établissement responsable de l'année. Beaucoup d'équipes et d'individus portent les initiatives allant dans le sens du développement durable au sein de leur établissement, et le niveau d'implication, de dynamisme et d'engagement démontrés sont vraiment exceptionnels. Avec autant de projets fantastiques à travers le monde, cela a rendu la tâche de choisir les lauréats internationaux extrêmement difficile pour la jury. Nous remercions chacun d'entre vous pour avoir partagé vos initiatives inspirantes et nous vous souhaitons le meilleur pour la suite de vos projets. Nous remercions également les membres du jury qui ont eu la lourde tâche de choisir les lauréats. Pour chaque catégorie, nous annoncerons d'abord les noms des finalistes, puis les noms des établissements ayant recueilli les félicitations du jury, puis le lauréat, et enfin, nous visionnerons la vidéo du lauréat. Alors, tweetez à Green Gowns.
So the first international category is benefiting society. And this year we have 13 finalists.
La première catégorie internationale est impact positif sur la société. Cette année, nous avons 13 finalistes. Ayrshire College, United Kingdom. De la Salle Lipa, Philippines. Fassens University Center, Brazil. HESI, Montréal, Canada. International Islamic University, Malaysia, and University Saint Islam, Malaysia. Macquarie University, Australia. Northumbria University, UK. Quest International University, Perak, Malaysia. De Universidad Autónoma de Querétaro, México. Universidad del Norte, Colombia. Universidad Pontificia Comillas, Spain. Universidad San Ignacio de Loyola, Pérou. Pour remettre le prix dans la catégorie Impact positif sur la société, nous vous prions d'accueillir Georges Malamou de l'Agence universitaire de la francophonie.
To present the Benefiting Society Award, please welcome Georges Malamou from l'Agence universitaire de la francophonie.
Le jury a décerné des félicitations à 2 établissements. Le premier établissement félicité est l'Universidad del Norte en Colombie. Le second établissement félicité est Northumbria University au Royaume-Uni. Le gagnant, dans la catégorie Impact positif pour la société pour un grand établissement, est l'Universidad San Ignacio de Loyola au Pérou. Voici leur vidéo.
Okopata, a wonderful town, characterized by the warmth and ancestral customs of its people, is located in the Cusco region at an elevation of over 4,000 meters. Unfortunately, it has the following deficiencies. 64% of children under 3 years of age have anemia, 68% multidimensional poverty, 76% vulnerable employment, 98% without telecommunications access. These needs led us to commit our entire education group to work with the Okopata community using a high-impact, sustained social service model based on 9 lines of action: production, tourism, education, health, infrastructure, environmental protection, culture, governance, support, all with projects in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, which in only 2 years have achieved the following: empowerment of women for the development of an artisan association, improvement of the infrastructure and development of capacities in the community's schools, promotion and preparation of the community as a tourist destination by improving common areas and training the townspeople, better internet access for the community, implementation of technologies using solar energy, improvement in water quality, and the construction of a reservoir for the farm families, leaving us 3 important lessons learned. 1. The importance of encouraging the active involvement of our faculty, students, and staff in sharing their time and knowledge to become change makers. 2. The foundations of joint work with the community are respect and openness on the part of everyone involved in order to learn about different cultures. 3. The generation of partnerships is key to developing synergies that make sustainable actions possible in the present and in the future. Today, following the work done in partnership with the public and private sectors and civil society, we've outlined the challenge of reducing the multidimensional poverty index effectively and efficiently by the year 2022. At the same time, we plan to consolidate the university social service model so that it will be replicable and scalable by other organizations in communities in a vulnerable situation, thereby contributing to a more sustainable Peru. We know we can do it with everyone's support.
Le gagnant, dans la catégorie Impact positif pour la société pour un petit établissement, est le Ayrshire College au Royaume-Uni. Et voici leur vidéo.
I'm here to talk about the Ayrshire College initiative Passing Positivity and the difference it's made to the people living and studying within our community in Ayrshire. It's unfortunate that it's been well documented that people living in Ayrshire suffer from significant health problems. Now that's not unusual to Ayrshire. People in Scotland, 1 in 4 of us suffer from mental health issues. However, someone like Cumnock is 10 times the average for people taking their own lives, and that sadly is not really acceptable, and we wanted to pass positivity through the medium of sport to try and help people's mental health and try and avert these suicides that are taking place in our own communities. We've planned a series of events using sport to try and address the problems within the community, trying to get people to discuss the problems and make the world a better place. Chris Boyd, the Rangers, Kilmarnock and Scotland football player, was very keen to get involved and help us out, and as soon as Chris got involved, the SFA were keen to support us. In memory of Adrian, Lion Hat, we're doing a charity walk this year between 2 of the college campuses, and again that's to engage the community, to draw attention to people's mental health and to try and prevent suicides, encouraging people to talk about their mental health.
Hi there, I'm Ross Monroe. I'm a full-time wheelchair user, but today I'm going to be doing a sponsored walk in my life braces, also known as Canfoot. At my age, with my condition, which is Duchenne muscular dystrophy, this is a tough challenge for me.
And we won the British Green Gown Awards, and looking forward to the International Green Gown Awards in New York later on this year. One of our students said to me, very poignant words, Natasha Kerr said, it's not about the awards you win, it's about the rewards you get from doing the right thing.
Félicitations! Notre prochaine catégorie est l'implication des étudiants. Cette année, nous avons 11 finalistes.
Congratulations to everyone. Now our next category is student engagement, and this year we have 11 finalists. We have De La Salle Lipa from the Philippines, Belarusian State Pedagogical University from Belarus, Fasten's University Center from Brazil, Lycée d'Aqua Nord Bonamoussadi from Cameroon, Universidad del Norte from Colombia, University Institute of Technology of Saint-Étienne from France, University of Cyprus from Cyprus, University of Graz from Austria, University of Strathclyde from the UK, University of Wollongong from Australia, and last but not least, we have Yale University from the USA. Now, to present the Student Engagement Award, please welcome Alex Wright from the Association of Commonwealth Universities.
Pour présenter la catégorie L'implication des étudiants, merci d'accueillir Alex Wright, l'Association des universités du Commonwealth.
Hello, my name is Alex Wright. I'm Head of Policy and Public Affairs at the Association of Commonwealth Universities, and I'm presenting these awards on behalf of Dr. Joanna Newman, our Secretary General. The judges have awarded 3 highly commended awards. The first goes to the University of Wollongong in Australia. The next highly commended award goes to Universidad del Norte in Colombia. The final highly commended award goes to the University of Graz in Austria. And the winner of the Student Engagement International Green Gown Award for a large institution goes to the University of Strathclyde in the UK. We'll now watch their video.
At Strathclyde, Vertically Integrated Projects, or VIPs as they are known, allow our students to work alongside research, staff and academics on active research projects throughout their time at university. This experience allows students to develop a deeper level of subject learning, acquire academic credits, and develop the wide range of competencies employers look for in our graduates. Research teams can also be multidisciplinary, involving collaborative working between students from all faculties and departments, and so a typical VIP team may involve students not only from different year groups, but significantly from different disciplines. The VIP model offers undergraduate students the opportunity to work in partnership on real-world research projects, while also mobilising and challenging students to become active now in tackling the most pressing global challenges of our time. We have 12 VIP projects involving more than 200 students, each focusing on a primary STG. One such project is the Energy for Development VIP, which focuses on SDG 7, ensuring affordable and clean energy for all. Here, engineering, business and social science students come together to design appropriate and sustainable energy solutions. Students also get the opportunity to install off-grid systems and test their solutions in remote rural communities in Africa and India, completing 12 village school installations to date. Other VIP projects have focused on health and well-being, such as our drug discovery team, where engineers, biochemists and mathematicians have worked together to develop new techniques that can be used in the discovery of new antibiotics. Our education-focused VIPs partner with local schools in low participation areas of Glasgow and rural communities in sub-Saharan Africa. The VIP for Sustainable Development Programme, getting you ready for the world of work by tackling the work of the world. Join us in making a difference through useful learning.
And the winner of the Student Engagement International Green Gown Award for a small institution goes to Facens University from Brazil. We'll now watch their video.
Lixo. Eu acho que é só a ponta do iceberg sustentado pela falta de consciência ambiental e vulnerabilidade social. Para mim, eco e jink uma palavra é transformação.
A Ecological é uma gincana de 3 dias de duração, que acontece numa escola pública que apresente situação de vulnerabilidade social. Os alunos da FACEM são divididos em equipes juntos aos alunos da escola e juntos devem cumprir tarefas da gincana, formando uma verdadeira competição entre as equipes. A competição tem como objetivo desenvolver a consciência socioambiental, trabalhando temas como empatia, empoderamento, atitude empreendedora e liderança. Isso impacta não somente os alunos da escola, mas os voluntários da FACEM.
A parte que mais me toca, assim, é a parte de ajuntar realidades diferentes, de explicar para eles sobre sustentabilidade e conseguir trazer esse conhecimento que às vezes eles nem esperam e nem conhecem.
Na Ecological, os professores recebem ferramentas de empreendedorismo que podem ser aplicadas em suas aulas. Outro momento são as atividades da gincana em si. Tudo vale ponto. Paródia, gritos de guerra sustentáveis, o respeito e empatia com os colegas e voluntários e a coleta de resíduos na comunidade. Ao final da gincana, professores e alunos se juntam para desenvolver um protótipo que visa solucionar o problema de lixo da escola e da comunidade.
Na Ecological, ganha quem faz mais pontos, mas além disso, a gente ganha inspiração, ganha empatia, ganha vontade de mudar o mundo.
Ganha o desejo de ser alguém melhor para você mesmo, para o outro e para o mundo.
Congratulations, everyone. Now, our final category is Sustainability Institution of the Year. And we have 9 finalists.
Félicitations! Notre dernière catégorie est celle de l'établissement responsable de l'année et nous avons 9 finalistes. Charles Sturt University, Australia, De La Salle Lipa, Philippines, International Islamic University, Malaysia, Start AD, New York University, Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates, Universidad San Ignacio de Loyola, Perú, Universidad TecMilenio, México, Universidad Veracruzana, México, Universidad de Oviedo, Spain, University of Worcester, United Kingdom. Pour présenter la catégorie Établissement responsable de l'année, merci d'accueillir Hillage Vantland de l'Association internationale des universités.
To present the Sustainability Institution of the Year Award, please welcome Hillage van Land from International Association of Universities.
The judges have awarded 3 highly commended awards. The first goes to Charles Sturt University from Australia. The next highly commended award goes to the Universidad TecMilenio from Mexico. The final highly commended award goes to University of Worcester from the UK. The winner of the Sustainability Institution of the Year International Green Gown Awards for a small institution goes to International Islamic University, Malaysia. We will now watch the video.
In the last 2 years, we have been trying to manage to change an university into a university that is truly international and sustainable. In this way, we are able to move as much as possible the nature of education for the future by changing not only the structure of the university, but also the knowledge base as far as the university is concerned. In other words, IIUM is moving into a whole institutional transformation, taking with it the national education philosophy, Sustainable Development Goals, United Nations 4 Pillars of Learning, and other very important foundation as far as the university is concerned.
Among the things we do to transform IUM as a sustainability institution was to rename some of the offices and centers to suit their functions to promote sustainability agendas such as responsible research, student development, community engagement, and knowledge for change. We also introduced holacratic leadership and management, where everyone in the campus is empowered and entrusted to carry out their sustainability initiatives.
Within a year, the impact of 29 flagship projects created could clearly be seen in 5 areas. First, the breaking down of academic administrative silos in a transformational way. 2, the building of voluntary teams and teamwork across the academic structure based on shared aspirations. 3, allowing for greater creativity and social innovation in translating SDGs into local context. 4, enhancing community engagement in co-problem solving based on SDG. And lastly, capturing data and information to be transformed into knowledge and wisdom.
The formal classroom education is now linked to our co-curricular activities, which give more meanings to our community engagement projects through learning to know, learning to do, learning to be, learning to live together, and learning to become.
I hope you have been able to see the gist of transformation that we are trying to do for the last 24 months using the whole institutional transformation and also carving a new idea of what a human university is all about as a kind of novelty for the future.
The winner of the Sustainability Institution of the Year International Green Gown Awards for a large institution goes to Universidad San Ignacio de Loyola from Peru. We will now watch their video.
Over 50 years ago, the San Ignacio de Loyola Education Group was founded for the purpose of shaping global professionals with a strong social and environmental commitment. Therefore, our organization implemented a sustainable management model that encompasses 3 dimensions: academic management, social impact management, and environmental and corporate management, which are in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Good practices have enabled us to make a positive impact on our stakeholders. Since 2010, nearly 9,000 students have taken courses in sustainability and social responsibility. In addition, toward the end of 2017, the Sustainable Development Goals were included in the university curriculum in a cross-cutting manner. This has led to the participation of more than 8,000 students and faculty members in approximately 600 volunteering activities over the last 4 years, fostering the development of vulnerable populations with projects such as the Ocopata Living Lab in Cusco, among others. These projects have enabled us to contribute over 164,000 hours of service, generating transformative experiences. We are also committed to providing access to higher education through different scholarship programs for talented students, including the Peruvian Potential Scholarship, among others, which have benefited more than 3,500 young people from all over Peru. For its part, the UCI-style program has focused on people's welfare by holding different activities and encouraging a healthy lifestyle among over 3,000 employees. We have locations that carry out the Sustainable Campus program, which promotes responsible consumption, proper waste management, and a culture of environmental protection, in addition to eco-efficient buildings. Our goal is clear: to make sustainability part UCIL DNA, turning members of our community into agents of change. We say goodbye, convinced that a sustainable world is possible, and that only together can we change Peru and the world. We are all Sustainable UCI.
Congratulations to all of our International Green Gown Awards winners and finalists. These videos, plus over 600 case studies and videos from past finalists and winners, can be viewed online at the Sustainability Exchange. A winner's brochure will also be available online at our website. We now encourage all of you to promote the good practices for sustainability within and beyond campuses as the spirit of the awards. The Green Gown Awards are not only to celebrate achievement, but to share the learning globally and to help all universities and colleges become sustainability leaders. Now, I encourage each and every one of you to think about applying for the awards for 2021. The awards offer a great opportunity to promote your sustainability best practice and to get the recognition that you and your institution deserve. A big thank you to Sonia for co-hosting our ceremony and to all our partners. Thank you to you for being a great audience, and thank you to the finalists who will be watching from across the world.
Félicitations à tous nos lauréats et finalistes des International Green Gown Awards. Ces vidéos, ainsi que les quelques 600 autres issues de nos lauréats et finalistes des années précédentes, peuvent être visionnés en ligne sur le site internet Sustainability Exchange. Les brochures des lauréats seront disponibles en ligne sur notre site web. Nous vous encourageons tous à promouvoir les bonnes pratiques en matière de développement durable à l'intérieur et à l'extérieur des campus, conformément à l'esprit de ces trophées. Les Green Gown Awards ne visent pas seulement à célébrer les réussites, mais également à partager les connaissances acquises au niveau mondial et à aider toutes les universités et tous les établissements d'enseignement supérieur à devenir des leaders en matière de développement durable. J'encourage chacun d'entre vous à envisager une candidature pour les trophées en 2021. Ces trophées constituent une excellente occasion de promouvoir vos meilleures pratiques en matière de développement durable et d'obtenir la reconnaissance que vous et vos institutions méritez. Merci au public et merci aux finalistes qui regarderont cette vidéo à travers le monde.